Welcome to Tibalt's Apprentice, Luck of the Draw. Yet another COVID diaries, I guess. We're going to take another brief look at one of my decks. I'm looking for your suggestions on what to add to it. However, as you can tell from the show notes, or rather the artwork, you don't want to build this deck. It's fun. This is the budget version of it, so I'm happy to make upgrades of value, whether that be in price or just cards. But you're probably not going to want to play this more than once, or depending on your play group, you may never get a chance to play this again. It's going to be fun the first time you do, but it's really single-minded in its strategy and what it does, and it doesn't make the other people at the table very happy. Yes, that's right. It is Yasova Dragonclaw. I don't know if I said that right or not. Anyhow, it's a sack deck, and it's sacking other people's stuff. Normally that we look at three different things in this. We look at getting ahead of the curve. We look at setting up our end game, and then that instant win. If there is one. This is going to be a little bit different because this deck doesn't work quite the way other decks do, in the fact that it relies on other people putting down creatures, you taking them and sacking them for value. So, having said that, getting ahead of the curve in this case doesn't mean getting ahead of them with mana rocks. It means having your strategy laid out before they win. Average is about 10 turns or so before somebody pulls ahead strongly enough to close out the game. So we need our strategy to be in place first. So I've got about 14 Sac Outlets in this deck. There's only about maybe 3 of them that actually matter. Well, let's go through it just a little bit to see what we have here. We're going to start with Primal Growth, and you're almost never going to pay that kicker cost. Fling makes for a nice surprise, and especially when you're hurling one of their creatures back at their face. Grab the Reins is another one that I don't see a lot of play. And also, we look at Jarl, Master Polymorphist. I'm sure I butchered that name. At any rate, it's a body on the field that allows you to take creatures, which of course you're then going to sack. But it's a body on the field, which means that you've got to be able to protect it. We don't want anything that's going to tie us down and keep us from our long-term strategy of being able to sack creatures. So we don't spend a lot of time protecting the creatures that we have in this deck, because again, we're looking to use their creatures for our advantage. So one way to get a Sac Outlet on the field, and this is where it becomes a little bit more important and a little bit more relevant, is in the form of enchantments, such as Ooze Garden. For a white and a green, we can sack a non-ooze creature to get an XX creature. The fact that it's an enchantment makes it a little bit harder to deal with. Therefore, it gives our opponents more of a problem with something to shoot for. The other thing that I have in here is a Culling Dais. Now this one, you can tap, sack a creature, and put a charge counter on it. The problem with these two so far is the fact that they have costs associated with them. This has to tap, and the other one you have to pay a colorless and a green. Here's another one. Another one being the Snod Sanctum. I'm sure I said that wrong. At any rate, 2 colorless, tap it, and you remove target permanent you control from the game. So once you've taken over something of theirs, you can now put it basically in the Sanctum. Spending 2 later on and sacrificing the Sanctum will let you get back those creatures later. Evolutionary Leap is another enchantment that will allow you to get value, but again, it costs that green. Shivan Harvest, another enchantment, sacrifice a creature, destroy non-basic land. Great in the commander game. However, there's a cost associated, 1 red and 1 colorless. Perilous Forays, another enchantment. For a colorless, you can sacrifice a creature and search your library for a card of a basic land type, put it into play tapped, and then shuffle your library. Another fun one that we don't see played a lot, or at least I haven't seen played a lot, is Cold Storage. This time we have a colorless cost of 3, however, it doesn't have a tap symbol or anything else, so we can do this as many times as we like. So having lots of mana at our disposal is key. For 3 colorless, you can put a target creature you control into Cold Storage. You can sacrifice Cold Storage later on to get those cards back. Another fun one, and these are the 3 that really matter, but here we start with the Demon Male Halberg. For that, all we have to do is sacrifice a creature to equip it. No other cost, just sack a creature. So multiple times in a turn, easy to use. Spawning Pit has you sacrifice a creature to put a charge counter on it. For 1 colorless, you can remove 2 of those and create your own creature. Also handy because no cost attached to the sacrificing of the creatures. And of course, my personal favorite, and the one I think that works the best in this deck, of course, is Altar of Dementia. Sacrifice a creature. Target creature puts cards and number to the equal to sacrifice creature's power from their library into their graveyard. Not going to be a wise strategy in every case, but generally, people that play graveyard strategies are looking to do it at their pace. This allows us to be able to do it at our pace. Normally, the next thing that we talk about then is setting up the end game, those middle strategies that allow us to be able to pull ahead in the game. Really, with this deck, the most important thing is to draw fire away from yourself, to give yourself time to work. One way to do that is a Curse of Opulence. Disincentivize them for attacking you, incentivize them for attacking another player, and get that extra mana that you need. Navinral's Disc is another effective way of sometimes slowing down people. Now, it is an artifact, rather, that can be destroyed. So sometimes, though, having that on the field allows you that turn or two to be able to set up for a larger turn later on. Domineering Will is a nice surprise because it is an instant. It allows target player to gain control of up to 3 non-attacking creatures until end of turn. Those creatures, untap those creatures block if able. So a couple of interesting things about this. While it costs 4 to spend, it is an instant and it says target player. So never ever forget your politics. If there's a way that you can cripple somebody else at the table by making a deal and maybe throwing some surprise blockers in front of another player who's being attacked, might be a legit plan. Fecundity is another one that is going to add value to everybody at the table. Whenever a creature is put into the graveyard from play, that creature's controller may draw a card. It's not necessarily going to keep you from getting attacked, but it might slow people down if they are getting value off of that. And it seems like a rather innocuous card until people realize that you're going to get far more value off it than they will. The last of these middle cards here is Death's Presence. Whenever a creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, where X is the power of that creature. So, value all the way around. This, as I said, was a budget build of this deck. One of the core 4, Josh and I worked on this deck together, or rather he pointed it out to me. I started with an initial list that was, like I say, an initial budget build, and have tweaked it since then, and am going to continue to tweak it. So if you see any cards that are listed here that should be swapped out or could be improved, let me know in the comment section down below. We don't have a surprise win in this deck per se, but we do have some fun cards like Ghostly Flicker, exiling 2 artifacts, creatures, or lands, and then bringing them back. So never forget that once you've declared a block, that block sticks even if the creature isn't there anymore. Handy ability to keep in mind. Ether Spout is another one of those surprise things, another instant that can turn the tide of the game. For each attacking creature, its owner puts it on top or the bottom of his or her library. This can also be used as a political card. Word of Seizing, and this one, it's worth noting, has split second. So we're going to take advantage of those keywords that are out there. Untap target permanent and gain control of it until end of turn. It gains haste until end of turn. This says target permanent. It doesn't say target creature. So unless there's some errata that I don't know about, think about that. It could be used exceedingly well. And that split second, being able to shut off anything else that happens that turn, or at least ending that part of the phase, can be useful. Harrow is another one of those cards that I was never really a fan of until I read it more closely. Because you do have to sacrifice a land, but it is an instant, and it does allow you to search for 2 basic land cards and put them onto play immediately. With so many things being landfall triggers these days, handy card to keep in mind and be aware is in the deck. Royal Elemental is actually the card that I am thinking of that this would work best with. Being able to harrow, Royal Elemental says, with landfall, whenever a land you control enters the battlefield under your control, you may gain control of target creature for as long as you control that Royal Elemental. A harrow suddenly allowing you to take 2 creatures from them, and then if you have one of your other Sac Outlets, you could put them in cold storage or whatever the case may be. Might be just enough to turn the tide in your favor. Finally, Reigns of Power. Untap all creatures you control and all creatures target opponent controls. You and that opponent each gain control of all other creatures until end of turn. Those creatures gain haste until end of turn. Never forget that you can keep priority when you play that spell. Keep priority so that every creature that you have immediately gets sacked away, while you take all their creatures and then sack those away too. At any rate, you can see why this deck isn't going to be a deck that you're going to be able to play every single time that you set down. But if you're like me and you play with multiple groups and you're always looking for new players, it might be a fun one to whip out every now and then, though you also might not be invited back again to play. I could see that happening. At any rate, if you have seen any cards that you think absolutely don't belong there or could be better replaced with something else, let me know in the comments. If you do have to buy some of these cards now that you've seen them, you want to go do that at your local game store. If you can't, be sure and click on the link down below and go to TCG Player and get your cards there. But always shop local if you can. In the meantime, thanks for watching. See you next time.